All right, guys, this is your mini lecture for chapters 13 through 16. Again, remember it's a mini lecture, so it is going to be much more condensed than if it was in an actual classroom. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. Chapter 13 and 14 are looking at adolescence. And, you know, this tends to be now the section where students just get it because you can relate to it. So with chapter 13, you're looking at how you transition from adolescent to adulthood, your physical and your cognitive. You know, again, I think you can handle, you know, the physical stuff about becoming an adult. One thing that it talks about is emerging adulthood, being from 18 to 25 years. So again, when you guys were looking at your paper, some of you might look at adolescence for that and go, yeah, I'm still a teenager for some things, but I'm not for others. So that's where we get that emerging adulthood, that college age, you know, the 18 to 25-year-olds trying to transition. So that's kind of what that talks about, is just how that transitions, things that are related to becoming an adult, holding a full-time job, being economically independent, that sort of stuff. It talks about your transition from high school to college, which for some of you might have been very easy. Some of you, it might have been harder. Some of you, maybe you're a returning student and, you know, maybe you didn't go right to college from high school. So some of this stuff varies. It really isn't a big deal to look at, just looking at how your physical performance is, your health and that sort of stuff. Really in this chapter, it also talks about some of your eating disorders that can come up at this age range, looking at exercise, looking at substance abuse. What is that? What is addiction? Which unfortunately is topics that do come up in the college years. It looks at sexuality topics, sexuality and emerging adulthood. Now, I understand of sexuality fluidity. Your textbook does not address that very well. So yes, I understand that. And yes, I understand that some of this may not apply to some of you. And I get that some of it might, but especially in the sexuality chapter where they're talking about sexual orientation and behavior, you know, some of this may or may not apply. Of the faults of this textbook is not getting up to date on some of the sexual orientation topics. But, you know, again, you can read this stuff. This isn't usually too difficult. Gets into the lovely, you know, sexually transmitted infections and what goes along with that. But then it also looks at, which tends to be one of those things that might be a little more challenging, operational thought, where we, you know, talk about the final stage in cognitive development, you know, is this formal operations, but and that really starts, you know, in the high school age. But some theorists propose a fifth post-formal stage, which is this post-formal thought. That thought is, and thinking is reflective, relativistic, contextual, provisional, all of those things. And it kind of, I don't know why it didn't. Your textbook will definitely, you know, kind of talk about what those are and how post-formal thought is very reflective. It's very relativistic. It's very contextual. It's very, you know, in the moment, those kinds of things. The cognitive stuff also involves achievement in career, in work topic, your overall, which I struggle with my young people that I teach, the junior high and high schoolers that I teach, of really trying to help them change their growth mindset about what they can and cannot do. We find even college students that are very much in this fixed mindset of I'm good at this, so I can't be good at anything else, or I'm always going to fail, those kinds of things. You know, this chapter is not too difficult. It talks about work. It talks about, you know, other category. And that's why I said this section usually is not a huge problem for students because you can relate. Chapter 14 is looking at social emotional development in early adulthood. So it's looking at your adult lifestyle. It's looking at, you know, your relationship to others. It looks at how your attachment as a child affects your attachment. Please don't read too much into things without a counselor around. But it does, you know, talk about your temperament, you know, and how your childhood temperament plays into how you are as an adult. It talks about your attachment and how that affects your romantic partners later in life. So as far as development relates to, you know, those first year or two of life when you are developing all those bonds with people. So this talks about attachment as adulthood. What style were you as a child and how you are as an adult? Again, please do not self-diagnose. If you are concerned about something, please reach out to the Lang Health Center and talk to a counselor over there, please. Talks about attraction. It looks at love and what kind of things are happening with love. You know, how this is Sternberg's triangle of love. saying that there's intimacy, commitment, and passion. And what you have is defines what your relationship is. So if all you have is passion, that's nothing more than infatuation. That tends to be that one night stand, that person that you just sleep with, and and that's it. There's no other intimacy or commitment. But you could have, you absolutely could have people that are just in the commitment column. Maybe their significant other is unable to, for whatever reason, unable to have a relationship, maybe because of illness, who knows. Different things across culture for love. How do you fall out of love? And then some adult lifestyle topics that it gets into, just about being a single adult, cohabitating adult, etc. That's really all that chapter is. Again, this chapter is usually pretty easy. Talks about becoming a parent, the birth of a child. Oh my gosh, there's nothing that will rip a marriage apart more than having a child. So trying to have a child to keep a marriage together is the total opposite of what actually will happen. Just some things about parenting, about divorce, different things that are going on with that. This chapter is not real difficult. Chapter 15 is your physical and cognitive in middle adulthood. Again, you have to realize that in middle adulthood, you're kind of starting your decline, which sounds really bad, but you are. You're at, today, many 50-year-olds are in better shape and more productive than their 40-year-old counterparts were a generation or two earlier. So we are seeing people that are my age, being better off than a generation or two before us at a younger age. So this chapter, again, just kind of goes through the physical changes, all these fun things that happen, like, vision. I always have a vision issue. Skin wrinkles, age spots, hair thins. It's super fun, super fun physical changes. I'm kidding if you don't understand that. You lose height and you gain weight. It happens. Muscle and joint changes. These changes are going to happen no matter what. You might be very, very physically fit. The changes may just be a little behind some other people. I am forever struggling with the whole, going from my computer to a big screen. You guys can't see it, but I have a huge screen over here because it's hard as I age for my eyes to adjust as quickly as it used to. So lots of really fun changes in the middle adulthood. Cardiovascular, it's really a lot of fun. Talks about mortality rates and chronic issues. It talks about sexuality and menopause, and even things like male menopause, just different things that come up as you age. Talks about intelligence, and it looks at crystallized and fluid intelligence. Crystallized being the accumulation of information, fluid being decline, which is unfortunate. Watching someone with fluid intelligence that is declining is really quite sad. But just all of these things that change the way that you process information, changes the speed at which people could process information as the age declines as well. So lots of that kind of stuff. And then it also gets into career changes and different things that happen later in life. Your religion and spirituality life as well, that changes, that towards the end of this, you're looking for the meaning of life and what difficult material. And then finally, chapter 16 is going to be your social emotional development in middle adulthood. Again, nothing that needs a huge amount of explanation. Looks at stability and change in close relationships, looks at stages of generativity versus stagnation. Are you giving back to people, or are you just kind of stagnant, not really doing much? Are you giving back to the next generation or not? So stages of adulthood, early transition from 17 to 22, middle adult, usually between 40 and 45-ish, it starts, which is fun. And late adult that starts in the 60 to 65 range. Again, it just talks about stages of adult. Is there a midlife crisis? It really is, how do people define life? I don't know that it's necessarily a crisis for everybody. Some people might, I adore my children, but, I just told my 15-year-old, I'm ready for her to drive because I love her dearly, but I've been driving kids around for 29 years. I'm done. I'm done. My oldest is 29. My youngest is, when I look at that, I don't look at that as I'm losing my baby. I look at that as, I finally have some freedom. I don't have to drive kids around anymore. So is that a change that's leading to a crisis for me? No. As I look at retirement, is that a change that's looking at a crisis? No, it's not. But other people, it might hit me someday. I don't know, but it's stressful for them. And again, it's just some general information about what people are concerned about, the social clock, different things that come up in this age range as well. Midlife development. It's really nothing too, too difficult in this section. Looking again at close relationships, love and marriage at midlife, empty nest. This is the one I think that will hit me the hardest when my youngest leaves the home. Oh, that one's going to bother me because it'll be my last one leaving. So again, sibling relationships. I mean, it's just not difficult information in this section. Really not a lot that needs explanation. So hopefully you'll zip through this chapter or this section pretty quickly. But as always, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a good day.